Welcome back to Lee Anderson's Real World. It's time for Real World, Real People. Let's see what real people are thinking about. They don't come much realer. Is that Real World? Realer than Sheila Smith. Property entrepreneur. And what's this BeHomed property firm that you run? What is that?
Yeah, absolutely. So BeHomed is helping renters become homeowners. So they can move into a property now and rent to buy it simultaneously over a time, with a portion of their rent going to buy the house at the end of the rental term. And they've got the option to buy that, so they're not locked in.
So who actually owns the house when these people move in?
So there are several different ways we can do it. On the one hand, we work with landlords. So my company, BeHomed, would lease the property from a landlord for a long lease, and that could be a period of years. It could be 3 years, it could be between 3 and 7 years, say.
Yep.
And then we'll put a carefully vetted tenant buyer to make sure that we're the stepping stone between not being able to get a traditional mortgage now to being able to get a traditional mortgage in the future. So then we are not actually in this scenario, we're not buying the property, the tenant is buying directly from the landlord.
But that landlord has got to want to sell the property.
Yes, 100%, but it's the perfect storm for landlords wanting to leave the market now.
Got you.
The rising mortgage costs.
Yes.
Others, we've got the renters reform, we've got the EPC regulations coming in. So
it's like a transition from having your rental property to selling it in a sort of nice way.
Absolutely, and then you save having to have a void, because if you're selling on the open market right now, you've got to tell your tenant to move, and then it can take months potentially to sell that property, and then the conveyancing might take 4 to 6 months. So you're potentially, as a landlord, sitting on a void of at least 6 months. But the rental market,
though, Sheila, is coming under a lot of pressure at the moment, because we see, especially in my industry, in politics, that we see that Serco are going around the country hoovering up all these rental properties, offering landlords 5-7 year contracts. They'll pay the rent for 5 years for the illegal migrants are staying, pay all the bills, and then renovate the property once they've moved out. How does that affect your business? So
that doesn't really affect my business, because they're working with a different type of client. The type of client that I'm working with tenants, aspiring homeowners, people that want to become homeowners, but are locked out of the traditional mortgage market right now. So that might be because they haven't quite saved up enough deposit, or they might not have a credit score. So a lot of women are coming to me that have recently got divorced, but the family home has been in their husband's name, so they just don't have the kind of credit score that a mortgage company needs. Or it could be somebody that's new to the country who doesn't currently qualify for a mortgage yet, or self-employed. I mean, the mortgage companies
I've been reading your notes earlier, as I do, because I'm diligent.
That's always good.
How does the incident, the horrific 9/11 incident, tie into all this sort of stuff you're doing at the moment?
So I lived in America for a number of years. My parents moved there when I was in high school. They said, would you like to go to boarding school in England or high school in America? And my sister and I were high school in America, obviously. So I went to university over there and worked in the design industry. And so quite a difference, and was working in New York. And during that horrific time, I remember that day very well, and it made me reevaluate everything, because New York became a very difficult place to be after that horrific attack, and lots of people left New York, and it made me think that I wanted to do more than be doing my design.
So was you there that day when it happened?
I was in New York that day. I remember very specifically, I was a little bit late to work, and I left my apartment door, and my landlord, who lived next door, happened to be there and said, don't think you're going to work today. I was like, what are you talking about? He said, just go in and turn the TV on. And I spent the rest of the morning riveted to the TV and just watching things unfold.
Yeah, because I've actually been by the site of the Twin Towers, and we went by on a bus. I think it was last year. We went with the Home Affairs Select Committee, and you couldn't tell there was actually a building there, because it's so small, isn't it? Really, the area where the towers are.
I mean, they were obviously very tall.
Tall buildings, but the area what they're in is quite small.
Yeah.
So how did that impact you then, moving forward that day?
So I decided in the subsequent months that it was time for me to move back to England. So I spent a year travelling around Southeast Asia by myself, and the poverty there was much more extreme.
When you say poverty, tell me about the poverty, because we talk about poverty levels in the UK, and I always say you don't know what real poverty is. You know, go to one of these third world countries. What sort of things did you see, Sheila?
No sanitation for a start, and then just the slum towns of little huts built out of corrugated iron, just stretching into the distance, and there's a lot of disease there. But the thing that really struck me is that people are really happy there, and as a traveller by myself, I was quite often invited into people's homes, and I knew that they had nothing, but they would still give me a drink or they would still feed me. And it just was very heartwarming, and it just made me really think about things in a different way. But it absolutely made me realise that I wanted to do something positive in the world, to give back and make my corner of the world a better place.
So would you ever think of returning to these places and giving something back to these places rather than staying in this country?
Absolutely. In fact, that's a very good question, because I have worked for a number of years with the Hunger Project, and that is an ethos that I've really brought into my own business, because their ethos is sustainable change in those kind of communities.
Teach a man to fish, that sort of thing.
Exactly that. And it's all about a hand up instead of a handout.
Yeah, I get that.
And that's the exact ethos that I'm bringing to BeHomed.
And perhaps we should bring some of that ethos back into this country, because I've had a few debates on this subject.
Yeah.
A hand up, not a handout.
Absolutely.
Sheila, that has been fascinating. Our time is up. Coming up next, we've got right versus left.